Hello, super expanders. How are you? Oh, goodness. I think I say this every time because every single time I have like the most amazing guests here on the podcast. And today it's extra special because I have sitting with me a coach, a mentor of mine who I'm so honored that she was able to make time to show up and share her magic with us here today. Let me introduce you to Aisha Marshall, my mentor, my coach, and I'm so inspired by you on the daily, and I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I'm very excited to be here and I'm excited for your podcast. I'm excited to, see it grow and just kind of share a space with you. Um, that is exciting for me.
Thank you. Yep, so excited. So, this podcast is all about organic, real conversation. So, I would love for you to share just a little bit about who you are and what exactly you do in this world, your purpose, your passion, all the things.
So, like you mentioned, my name is Aisha Marshall. And it just got me thinking when you're like who you are and all of the things. And I feel like the first thing that people do when they introduce themselves is like what they do. But a theme in my life this year is not necessarily based off of what you do, but who you are like on the inside. My word for this year is integrity. And I am more than what I do. So I am a believer, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, a great friend, and I am great at marketing. I'm a marketing consultant, ran an agency, and yeah, that's me.
I love that on so many levels because that's part of when I say who you are. It's exactly it. And I love that that landed for you to share it that way. I'm fully obsessed that your word is integrity because integrity is literally my top core value. Um, and it wasn't until, I mean, I've known that it's been a core value, but I did not quite realize that it was my top core value until I was healing some of my own personal triggers
Mm-hmm.
in these past few months. And so when you said your word was integrity, I just got these like buzzing chills down my arm. I'm like, see, I knew it. I knew this is why I won the lottery when inside of Fast Foundations, the
Yeah.
mastermind. I was like, when I got the message that you were my coach and my mentor, I was like, oh my gosh, how did I get so lucky? I totally won the lottery, and this
Yeah.
just even reinforces it to like the next level.
Yeah. You know what is so crazy about the word for me though? Like every year, my husband and I will choose a word, and it's usually based off of the previous year, like things we could have done better at. And this year, we have like our tradition of every year at the top of the year and like how we kind of formulate and plan our lives and whatever. And this year, the day before planning, I wasn't thinking, ooh, what's our word? Like I just usually we'll just come together and talk and then be like, oh yeah, that's a good word based off of the year we had and we could work on this year, blah, 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 blah. The night before, I had a dream about the word integrity, and all of these different like weird scenarios were happening that were all different forms of integrity. Like not what you think. I feel like initially what you think is like honesty, telling the truth, like but the word is just so vast and can take on so many different things. Anyway, so I like to share that because usually when I hear people say my word of the year, I'm always like, well, like what, how did that come about? And for me, it was always just the past, but now I'm like, clearly there's some sort of subconscious / divine intervention that happened for the word integrity. So I love that we both share in that word together.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I love that too. There is so much depth to the word and the meaning. So let's let's dig a little deeper. What was I want to talk about this dream? Can we talk about it? Is that like okay? Will you share?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally fine. Some of the scenarios I don't quite remember, but one scenario was I was like coaching cheer or at cheer practice. I actually don't remember which one was which. And I was talking about the integrity of something, meaning like, it's how good is it, right? The integrity of this, like how quality is it? And then another one was like working out. And we were talking about working out. And I was like, see, this is also an example of integrity because you skipped the workout. So you're not being honest by blah, 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 blah. Right.
Oh,
So
yeah, I love that. I love that.
yeah.
That's like, I mean, there's like the integrity of how something's built, how you're showing up, how
Mm-hmm.
like, are you really showing up and delivering the best that you possibly can? And that's really funny inside of
Yeah.
this coaching type industry that we all sort of like orbit in, that it's like, it's almost becomes subject to opinion, even though it actually isn't really. It because if you're not delivering on what you promised, you're not showing up in
Right.
integrity.
Right. Or like my biggest thing, accountability has always been like super huge for me. And a trigger for me is when people don't do what they say they're going to do. Like that's always been such a huge trigger for me. Anyone in my life that is like, I will do this and then they don't do it. And I'm like, just don't say it. And like, we wouldn't be here. Right. But the other aspect of that is internal consistency. And so for me, that takes shape in so many ways, like even just with your self-talk, even with, your working out, your eating habits, like the things, your morning routine, like internal consistency, vitamins, like daily practices, meditation, like that's integrity. And
Mm-hmm.
so not a lot of people talk about integrity in that way. And I didn't really, until I did a deep dive into the word, I had told my husband about the dream and I was like, well, he was like, really? You think so? I'm like, I don't know. I just dreamt about it. Like, let's just see what it means. Like, let's look up the definition. Like, and then there's all of these things. It's like internal consistency, the quality of being honest, having strong moral principles, those are the things that we know, like moral uprightness. But then like the condition of being unified. So like for us in our marriage, like being unified in our marriage is huge, but I would never quantify that to mean integrity. So it had so much, I mean, there's so much to unpack there in so many different ways. And yeah, I'm like quite literally obsessed with the word these days.
So good. And I can see that too, because when you're talking about just the internal chatter and our health practices, integrity, it's also, I don't know that it would be fully like a synonym, but like comes with it is this congruency, right? And so if you're not
Mm-hmm.
walking the walk that you're preaching to your audience, to your followers and your business, to your relationships, then you're out of integrity internally, which means that you're not showing up in integrity, and you are the only one that really is going to know. And that's like such a big thing with it, like we got honoring our own internal commitments, right? Where that's where it all begins, all of it. And if you can't honor your own internal commitments, how can you honor your external commitments
Right.
fully, in full
Right.
integrity?
Right. And then the other facet of that is a lot of people will use that as an excuse. Like, I'm not showing up here because I'm not showing up for myself. But that might mean how you show up for yourself is also not in integrity. And that takes another look inside to see, is this an excuse? Or do I really need to evaluate how I show up for my life and like internally? Right. And that's hard.
It is. It is. Oh, I feel like this conversation could just like go on
Yeah,
and go on
forever.
for
Mm-hmm.
a really, really long time. I love obviously the word. I love the idea that it's going to be kind of a North Star for you for the
Mm-hmm.
year. I'm already feeling like we were going to have a conversation about this
Yeah,
when the year ties in a bow, all of
right.
the learnings, the depth of all of it, because I'm really, really curious,
Mm-hmm.
super curious. So integrity is the word for the year. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your business, because even though it's not who you are, I'd love to just just talk about it a little bit? Because you've had some serious accomplishments, right? I mean, you won, was it, it's Forbes, right?
Mhm.
30 under 30, which
Yes.
is, that's a big deal.
Yes. Yes, that is. And um the interesting part about it, at least where I'm at my journey right now, is I'm an Enneagram 3. And if you're familiar with it or if you're not familiar with it, I'm very accolade driven. Like things, prizes, accomplishments matter to me. And if I'm not in alignment or if I'm not in integrity with my best self, that can cloud my why, right?
Mhm.
So while that is a big accomplishment, um, to feel my to not feel my like worst self, I'm wanting to, and not in this podcast today or with you, but this is just like helpful for anyone else that may be a 3 that may be going through some of the similar things, be acknowledged for the type of person I am rather than my accolades, because that fuels me to be more accolade driven, right? Like being rewarded for the thing is the validation that I seek, as opposed to seeking validation for other things, period. But yes, Forbes 30 under 30 is a big deal. And yeah, I got it in marketing and advertising for an agency that I scaled to the multiple 6 figures. Super, super close to hitting the 7-figure mark. And it was hard ass work to get there.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's the real. These big dreams, these big accomplishments, they take work, friends. Oh my gosh, and
Yes.
lots of it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let anybody tell you any different.
All right.
And wow, yes, we are not our accomplishments. It certainly does feel pretty freaking good to be recognized for them,
It totally does. I feel like a drug
especially when
addict.
they're,
I'm like, I know. I'm like, don't acknowledge me for these things, because then my ego is like, oh yeah, and then I also, right? Um, I'm just joking, but yeah, it does feel it does feel really good. I blame it on my mom. I mean, I love her to death, but when I was younger, um, I would just get rewarded for good grades. Like I could literally have bad behavior, but if I had straight A's, all was well in the world for her. So that's why I'm like, that's why I am the way I am.
well, high achiever, but a little bit of a rule breaker maybe on the other side.
Yeah.
A little bit of a trailblazer because of that, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then the next layer of that, I'd love actually, even before we start talking about big, like who super expanders have been for you, you made a big move that I love to for you to like share a little bit about. And a reason I want to talk about it, it's almost like selfishly on my part, because I just recently took a big move in similar vein. And I'd love to hear what was the driving point. And I know like it takes a little bit of like courage to take a leap into something. So you are an investor, right? You're an
Mm-hmm.
investor in an all female funded company, which is
Mm-hmm.
a startup. And when we invest in startups, that is it's a it's a brave move. It is, right? Because there's obviously an investments period, there's no guarantees. But when you're
Right.
putting your own personal money into a company, that's a brave move.
Yeah. Um, I think there's a lot of money work that comes around like investing just in something in general, right? Like money mindset and all of the things. I am thankful, to bring it back to my mom, for her giving me the money mindset of, when you give money, never expect it back. In any instance, investments different, right? You want to do your due diligence, make sure it makes sense, make sure it's a sound investment and all of the things. But like you said, it's not always guaranteed. A return is not always guaranteed. people can like shit the bed and then you don't have anything to show for it. And that's okay. It's all a learning experience. But for this particular company, it was almost a no-brainer, only because I believe in the company. I was working with it at the inception. So I created the logo, the branding, the packaging, like all of the things, the social presence, the tone of voice, like it just felt like my creative DNA was involved in it. I believed, still believe in the product, and what was being built. So I think that's probably a hurdle when it comes to investing too, right? Do you believe in the product? Do you think the proof of concept makes sense? Like, how do you feel about it? When it comes to like your first investments, people who just invest as a hobby might be a little bit of a different criteria. And then the other aspect of it was with respect to the investment, in the same way that men do it, like it's kind of a networking opportunity if the company facilitates that. And because I knew that was going to be the case, that quote unquote risk, plus me believing in the company, plus the potential to network with other women who were make way more money than me, do way more things than I do, women that I aspire to be like, that this isn't their first company that they've invested in. They have a serious investment portfolio, millions in the market. Like, that's who I want to be around. That's who I want to learn from. That's who I want to call me up. And so that was also a no-brainer. And literally, it's probably one of the best things that I've ever done. But with respect to that, another like investment is time, right? Because it's a startup, it's helpful when your investors invest their time in helping you build. And so that there's no monetary exchange there. But when you believe in something and you invest your time into something, that's the same, in my opinion, the equivalent. And I don't know how religious you are, but like you can invest your money, time, talents into something, and that's an example of service. And so being able to invest my time into this company was also something that I wanted to be able to do in an act of service, because I enjoy the brand and I believe in it. And I know that I'm not necessarily expecting anything back, but just having that as a North Star, as a heart-centered place, that you always get a return one way or another. It may not be in this company, it may be in this company, it may not be in this season, it may be in this season, but when you lead in service, like you will always get an equal, if not more, energy exchange with respect to that.
I feel like if you guys weren't paying attention, you might want to go back and rewind that, because she just dropped some serious investment tips right there, just so you know. I love all of the juicy bits that you just shared with us. And I feel like one of the big takeaways from that is it almost, are investments ever safe? But there's an element of safety because of how, I mean, like you really intimately know the company. You're so invested in it, which also means, and invested even outside of the dollars, means that there's an amount of, not control, that's not the word I'm looking for, but a little bit, because in terms of like being able to advocate for the company, which is going to also be a huge piece for success. And then I also feel like the idea of having this network of women to really learn from is worth
Like,
every
right.
every
How could you
ounce.
lose? How could you lose? Even if nothing comes of it, the people that I've met, the opportunities that have come from that, it's priceless, right? Eventually you end up getting your money back based off of referrals, or, you know, people who want to work with you and so on.
Absolutely. So good. Which really so nicely brings us to the next question I have for you, which is, on your journey through all of your business, your coaching, your investments, where you've arrived at this place and stage in your life, who has it, like who have you encountered that has been a super expander for you. And I'm sure you have had many, and we can talk about as many as you want to talk about. Who has it been that's shown you that it's possible to blaze the trail, to create these big things in your life, in your business, in your relationships, all the areas?
I think that typically, like when people think about expanders and you correlate them to a big dream or an idea or somebody that can show you, hey, look what I did, you can do it too. Um, that's all and well, but I think what might be an unconventional way to think about it is someone that can show you, that shows you, this is the sty in your eye, or this is the flaw that you have, this is the flaw that I had, and there is a path to come out of it on the other side to be your best self. That is a most recent expansion that I had back in March of last year. I was in a mastermind with this woman or with a lot of people, but this one woman in particular. We were paired in a group every single day, and they were all randomly selected groups. So it was just like, holy cow, like, why am I paired in every group with her? And she had told me, like, I'm noticing that you're a codependent person. And I was like, what? Me? Like, I'm an only child. I'm very independent because you have to be as an only child. Like, I've never been like, come hang out with me. Hey, stay here. Like, come do this with me. I've been, I'll do it on my own. It's fine. But that's not a traditional term of codependency, which I didn't know. Codependency actually shows up in forms of, like, more traditionally, people who are around people with an addiction like alcoholism, even eating disorders, any sort of addiction across the board, not just like illegal drug related, right? Just people with addictive personalities in general. And so what ends up happening is you have person A, zero addiction, person B, addiction. And addiction sounds so bad. It could literally be any single thing. But person A, zero addiction, is living with, working with, anything with this next other person. Usually they're married to the other person. And person A will try to control person B to help at the situation that both of them are probably tied in. But then eventually person B realizes that their behavior, whichever way they move, person A will move because they're trying to control them. And then person B ends up being the one that's in control. And so that's a codependent relationship. And I had no clue. I knew none of this at the time. And I was still learning so much about codependency, but I was so offended when she told me that. She just like blurted it out. And I was just like, what? Like, first of all, you don't know me, one. And then she kept trying to like clean it up after, which, sometimes someone will say something and then it's like maybe borderline offensive, or like it came out wrong. And then you just spend like hours later trying to clean up what you said. And I just didn't want to be around her. And so the last day, there was another gal that was in the mastermind, and she was an Enneagram coach and can like personality type people very easily. So the conversation of codependency comes up again, and I'm literally cannot even hear the words that are coming out of her mouth because I'm just like so irritated. Like you're not really listening when you're irritated with somebody. You're just not listening. You're just thinking about your response when they're done talking. So the Enneagram coach explained codependency and how they felt like it was showing up for me. And it was true. And I was able to hear the Enneagram coach because she was kinder. Her delivery was much softer. And I couldn't unhear it from that day on. And it made me change the entire way I do business, the entire way I run my agency, the entire way I do anything, the entire way that how my marriage is, how I lead my team members, my staff. Like, it just changed everything because I was 100% a codependent person trying to control facets of my business that were unable to be controlled. And so this was in March. So we're going to come up on a year in like a few months. And everything is completely changed, completely shifted. Like I've changed so many, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the success if the inside doesn't match. And I say that to say, yeah, Forbes 30 under 30, yeah, on track to make $1 million. Yeah, all of the things, but like, it wasn't in integrity. And so talking with this gal afterwards, after the mastermind, I came back to work and I was like noticing it everywhere, like noticing how it came up for me in work, and which is what she kind of like exposed. And I just couldn't work the same anymore. I started to see it, and I'm like, I need to change this environment. I need to get out of this environment. And even small snippets of it were in my marriage. And I told my husband, like, we have a codependent relationship and these things need to change because X, Y, and Z. And he was like, wow, yeah, we do. So, and in our marriage, it wasn't like that, it was non-action, right? Like I would ask my husband to do something and he wouldn't do it. So I would just do it. But then I would get resentful because now I'm doing everything. And he would be like, she's going to do it. Right. But could you imagine being in business like that? You can only do so much.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Burnout, anger, resentment,
burnout,
fatigue.
anger, resentment, fatigue. I was working 18-hour days. My project manager, also a codependent person, was working 18-hour days. And we just weren't happy. And so we needed to change things, and everything has shifted since then. I'm like starting everything from scratch, revamping things like how they should be. And it's a journey, but it's an alignment, it's an integrity. And I'm much more happier in my marriage, in my personal life, in my, like, the self-work that comes along with figuring out that just because you're codependent in one area doesn't mean it's not showing up in other areas of life. And I'm super thankful for the woman who is now one of my really good friends for exposing that in me, because she had it in herself and had a similar situation where she was in business and had a codependent relationship with someone she was in business with and had to get out of that relationship. And now is in its uber successful woman that I like literally aspire to be, based off of making that pivot and kind of starting over in a sense. And that was an expansive time for me. It was like the wool was lifted over your eyes. You can't unknow what you know anymore. And you either take action or you don't. You're choosing success or you're choosing failure every day.
Such a powerful story. And I love that is the lens with which you were seeing Super Expander, because that is exactly, and like, it's not our Super Expanders aren't always, it's not a comfortable thing. It's expansion is growth. So as we're kind of exploring this idea of codependency and kind of like opening your eyes up to it, I would love to know what was like the first action step that you implemented once you became like really aware and understood what it meant, and where it was like showing up in your life, in your business, in your relationships. Like, what was the first thing you did?
The first thing I did when I was like, when I realized that I had just an inkling, like when I realized that what she was saying was true, then you want to go back and like, I don't know, do research on it all. I got a book called Codependency No More, started reading that, and it felt very extreme to where I was, because it was all like addiction related with respect to alcohol or drugs or an eating disorder. And that wasn't anything that I was experiencing. But I still at the time wasn't sure what action needed to be taken, or like what actual first step there was to change anything. I had conversations with the person that I was in business with, but none of the conversations were new, but it was never, this is codependency, this is that, right? I did leading up to that, I was having hearing problems. Like I felt like my ears were constantly plugged. I would have to like work with headphones because I couldn't like hear properly. It was just like, it felt like my ear was plugged. And I was like, maybe I have like have you seen those TikToks where they'll pull wax out of your ear? And like, I was like, maybe I have too much wax built up. Like, I don't know why I can't hear. And then it would switch ears. And it was so weird. I was like, it was bothering me for probably 3 months at minimum. And off and on. Some days I would have it, some days I wouldn't. And I have a really good friend of mine who does sound baths, and I had never gone to one before. But I was just going to hers to support her because she was having like this community sound bath where like everybody in Phoenix will come to this one place to do a sound bath. And so I went, and she was like, come sit up front. And I'm like, okay. So I sit up front, or I lay down up front. She does the sound bath, and I'm just like, oh, this is like a nice meditation. It's cool. And my throat started to get really tense and tight. And I was like, at this point in time, I hadn't had COVID yet. And so I was like, do I have COVID? Like, what just happened? Like, my throat feels so tight, kind of like tight when you're like almost about to cry, but I didn't feel like I needed to cry. It was weird. It just felt like, holy moly, somebody's like strangling me almost. And I get in the car and I'm like, I must have had a negative side effect to this sound bath. Maybe I was too close to the bowls and it was vibrating weird. I don't know. Cause you can feel, have you ever done a sound bath before?
Oh my gosh, yeah, and it's so wild. And there's like I have some stories I could tell you about
Yes.
the way the energy moves,
Yes.
and like it's what you're talking about. And it's
Yes.
yeah, you can feel it. It's like woo,
Yes.
woo.
Yes. So now that I know a little bit more research about sound and sound baths is every bowl, and I didn't really know this at the time because I didn't know anything about sound, chakras, nothing. In all fairness, I was like, oh, it's just like woo woo. I don't know. It's like fake, whatever. People just need to believe in something. And so they're believing in that. Which me, I'm very science-based. Like if you can tell me the science behind it, and then I'm like, oh, that makes sense, right? So let me explain the science before I tell you like what ended up happening. We're made of water, right? A lot, I don't even know what the percentage is, but it's like, I don't know, over 70% or something like that of water. And so each bowl vibrates when you run some like stick around it. It vibrates. So if you put water in sound bowls, you can see the water vibrating as you're like running the little like stick around it to make it move. Well, each bowl vibrates at the same frequency. Everything is energy. Energy is vibration. Okay. Each bowl vibrates at the same frequency as your chakra. I believe I'm explaining this right. I hope I am. As a specific chakra in your body. So let's just say if we're focusing on the sacral chakra, whatever, however things vibrate in that area of your body, the bowl kind of vibrates as well, and then gets you vibrating as well. And you hear people say like your body keeps score, right? Like if you're stressed, if you have trauma, anything that happens, your body keeps the score. And maybe it doesn't manifest itself in that time for you to heal, but it takes some time to manifest itself. For me, when I'm stressed, when I was at the most pinnacle stress of my entire life, I started to develop an autoimmune disease in my skin. My body was keeping score. I wasn't going to therapy. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't doing anything to like move that energy or move that stress in and out of my body. So what ends up happening? The energy moves to my body in an autoimmune disease. Same thing with trauma. Some people hold trauma in different places of their body. That's how cancer forms, all of the things. Anyways, before we go into this whole like scientific thesis, my throat was hurting because my throat chakra was blocked. So I get in the car. I didn't know this. I get in the car and I'm Googling negative side effects from sound bath because I'm convinced that I had a bad experience because all of a sudden my throat is hurting. And then I finally get to like not a rabbit hole, but like, Google will open up other suggestions for you.
Yeah.
It's like throat chakra blocked. And I was like, okay, unblock your throat chakra. I don't know. I was like symptoms of a blocked throat chakra because I'm like, well, let me see if I'm experiencing what it's saying. And then if it's true, if this is what I'm feeling, then I'll figure out how do I unblock it. And symptoms of a blocked throat chakra were loss of hearing. And I'm like, I know. I literally was like, what the fuck? I actually have been losing my hearing up until this point. And then I said, okay, how do you unblock your throat chakra? I was reading about the throat chakra, and it was saying like, you have something that you need to say, but you're not saying it. And that, I literally cried on the whole way home after that, in the car, crying, sobbing. Cause I knew, I'm like, wow. And I went home, said what I need to say, said things need to change or else I can't do this anymore. And there wasn't any change. And so after that, it was March, and then in April went by, nothing. May went by, nothing. June, nothing. July, I just had enough. And the action was extreme, but I was like, I need to shut down the agency and start something new. And literally all from the mastermind that March.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And your hearing is back to...
Yeah, I haven't had a hearing problem since.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
I say yes, crazy, but no, not.
No, when you like understand it and you like read up on throat chakras and sound baths and all of the things, like when you do that, you're like, okay, scientifically, this makes so much sense. For me, I was like, I don't even believe in any of that. Like I just not believe, but it just didn't seem, it seemed like make believe. I don't know. And it's not. So I was just like, I couldn't even believe it. My throat stopped hurting.
Yeah.
I haven't had a hearing problem since.
So what I really love about that is, so 100%, it's not a placebo effect. Because you came in essentially kind of like blank slate. It wasn't like you were going in with a preconceived thought or notion of what should come out of this sound bath. You were going to support your friend. The whole entire idea, you didn't even think it had anything to do with that until you're like, maybe the sound was like, got me. It was bad. You didn't even think it was like
I thought it was
good.
bad. Exactly. I'm like, this sound is expired. It's contaminated. Something happened to me. It's wrong.
So that's what I love about that so much, the story, and how you researched it, took action, and all of the things, the sequence of events that have happened after for you being so powerful, so potent. Because that's what I think when we start to listen to our intuition, and that's, all of that's really kind of tied in together, is a sequence of events that begins to happen. And the idea that sound can impact our lives in such a crazy, potent way is so cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's phenomenal. And I love it so much. Now that that was my experience. I tend to experience things great when I don't know what to expect. Like I did my like, not first meditation, but like serious meditation on a Joe Dispenza audio. And I was like, I had never experienced anything like that in my whole life. And I'm like, now I need to just go into things and not know anything about it. Cause I just end up like doing really well. But anyways, after my husband and I did our like New Year's planning, we'll plan out the year and then kind of break it down, like what that looks like by month with actionable items, blah, 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 blah. Well, we did like a sound bath to like lock it all in, which I thought was nice. He had never done one before. And it was nice. So yeah.
So good. Now you have to find out, and I don't know. So, the frequency scale, where integrity falls in on the frequency scale, because then you can like have like some binaural beats going in the background to support your word for the year.
That's a good idea. That's such a good idea. I think after this, I'm probably going to look that up.
Yeah. So I feel like just based on like synonyms, because integrity, I don't think actually is a word on the frequency scale, but I feel like you could pinpoint it based on what's there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Love it. Goodness. So good. Such a juicy conversation. Wow. I feel like we're already kind of like, my next question is, in a way, we've already touched on it, but I feel like let's dive into it just a little bit deeper. So let's shelf the idea of achievements and like numbers in the bank account, all of those things. If we were to be on this podcast a year from now, which I feel like we should totally should, how do you want to feel? How is that, like, how can that be your North Star, how you want to feel? Because I feel like when we take action on how we want to feel, that's when we open ourselves up to things that are greater than the goals that we put onto to paper.
Yeah. This is a good question. At the end of this past year, I felt like my husband and I had talked about this. The year like totally kicked our ass. Like we just had so many things from so many different angles, familial, work wise, which also trickles into financial. Like it wasn't the same. It wasn't, we weren't even nearly close to our goals, which is okay because of life. But we came out so good that you sometimes forget, right? So I felt like we had to keep reminding ourselves, like, but look how good we did do based off of all of this life that happened over the year. It was so much. Like, honestly, probably this year will go down as one of the hardest years in our marriage, not collectively as husband and wife, but just all of the outside factors that had happened throughout the year. So much death, so much just like psycho craziness. Anyway, I would like to feel like I don't need the reminder. Like I would like to feel like, wow, look how good we did and how much we accomplished based off of what we set out to do. We probably similar to how I felt in 2019. 2018, our word was good steward or stewardship. And I felt like we weren't being good stewards of what we had, right? Like we were making good money, it was fine, but like we could be saving, we could be investing, we could be getting our credit scores higher. Like we could be doing so much. We didn't own a house at the time. At the time he was playing professional football, like a lot of money was coming in and a lot of money was going out, but we literally had nothing to show for it. And I'm sure so many people can resonate with that.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and I felt like we weren't being good stewards of money. And then I was thinking about like, okay, what does good stewardship mean? Like, and then I was like looking at how we lived, and by no means, like we're very clean people, but like my mom taught me to fix my bed every day. Like I wasn't fixing my bed, or like my mom taught me to wash clothes every week. I wasn't washing clothes every week. And then clothes would spill to the floor and we would leave them there. And then our shoes would be on the floor. And then like it was just not what I'm used to. And so it's like, if we want more in every area, we need to be a good steward over what we have. Why would we have anything more if we are not being a good steward over it? So like we made sure we were like fixing our bed every morning, cleaning the up after ourselves, like putting our shoes away when we came home, like small things internally. And then we got on a really good budget. We paid off all of our personal debt. We built our credit scores and we bought a house. And that year I was like, wow, like look at everything we set out to do, we did. Like I'm so proud of us. I want to feel that way again at the end of the year. Like, wow, look at all the things that we set out to do and we did them. With integrity.
With integrity.
Because I also set out to be on Forbes. I set out to do a lot of things, but it just wasn't in integrity.
That is so, so good. I love that. I feel like part of that even just begins on like the daily celebration of the things that happen within the day that we set out to do, and that becomes that sort of compound effect, right? The like 1%. So this day into the next and into the next. So I actually cannot wait to follow up with you at the end of 2022 to hear how it's even better than you could have possibly ever dreamt of.
Yeah, it's going to be so good.
It is. I know that. I feel that for you. Okay. So we can tie this in a nice little bow. And I know that you have so much wisdom to share with this question. If you could give your younger self some advice, and I feel like this advice is like, it's really so potent for the people listening, because obviously we can't go back and give ourselves advice, but if you could give your younger self just a piece of advice, what would it be?
I think it would be something around self-work. I think my younger self might want to hear something that's more accolade driven if it's going to be like received well. But like there's a direct correlation with the amount of self-work you do to the amount of success you'll have. And yeah, I think that's what it would be. Then lessons I feel like are shorter because the time to get through over and around them isn't as long because you understand the concept of self-talk, all of the habits, all of the choices that you made that led you to this point, and how to combat that. There's so many lessons in life that you continue to repeat over and over and over and over again until you like pass that level or whatever. And for me, my younger self, with respect to codependency and friendship and business and relationships, this most recent experience is just a continued pattern, right? And so when you understand that, then you can break the pattern, but until you understand it, it'll keep coming up in your life over and over and over again. So if you're doing the self-work, you understand the patterns quicker, and then you can like collapse time so that you're not having to deal with the excess over time.
Yeah, it's kind of sounds like radical responsibility or radical ownership, right? When we take ownership of the situation. Yeah, so powerful. So good.
Yeah.
I have to say, this conversation was amazing. So grateful for you. So grateful that you were able to carve out a slice of time to be here, to share, so endlessly grateful for you.
Well, thank you. I'm grateful for you too. I'm glad that we were able to share space in this capacity. Thanks for having me on. I hope that I was able to at least touch one life with this. That would be amazing. So,
wow, I know you touched many. So how can the audience find you? What's the best way for them to enter into your world?
Instagram would be the best way. It's just Aisha, Aisha is my username. That would be the best.
Okay, you heard it here, friends. You've got to go follow, get in the DMs, like the post, learn from Aisha. She truly is just a wealth of wisdom. Very much appreciate you. So thank you so much. And that, my friends, is a wrap. See you on the next one.